Hey guys, welcome to my channel. We're reading Monster High, Diaries, Frankenstein, and the new Ghoul at School. We're reading Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is the last chapter, and yeah, I'm just gonna start reading. Chapter 8. After Icy left that night, Frankie joined her dad in the lab again. "I have an idea for what my next invention should be," she announced. Witsat was already curled up in his bed on the floor of the lab, while Zap-Pit charged nearby. Mr. Stein looked up, obviously pleased. "You're really cranking out ideas, sweetheart. What are you going to make this time?" Frankie smiled. "So, the thing I've learned since meeting Isel is that she's really missing her family. She's very close to them, and when she's home, she told me she spends a lot of time in the woods with the animals who live nearby. Today I was thinking it might be fun to build a pet for her too." She and Zap-Pit hit it off right away, and I think it would help make it easier for her to be away from her family if she had a little critter she could care for. Mr. Stein nodded. "That sounds like an excellent plan. Do you need my help?" "Nope," Frankie said happily. "You're such a great teacher that I think I actually got the hang of it this time." "Practice makes perfect, right?" "That's obviously right," he said. He put one hand on her shoulder and added, "You're proving what a great friend you are, Frankie. Seems as though you've gone out of your way to be kind and welcoming to Icy. And she's lucky to have you around this week." "I'm so glad I've had her around too," Frankie agreed. "I don't know if I ever would have found Zap-Pit without her." "That's true," Mr. Stein agreed. "You're lucky to have each other. It really proves what a special ghoul you are that you would be willing to give up one of your own lab creations to comfort a friend. I'm proud of you." Frankie buzzed with happiness. "Thanks, Dad." Miss Stein poked her head around the corner to see what was cooking in the lab. "How are you two crazy inventors doing down here?" she asked. "We're voltacious," Frankie answered. She invited her mom over and told her about her plan to create Icy a pet for her own. "You sure do seem to be hitting it off," Miss Stein noted. "Is Icy getting along well with your other ghoul friends too?" "Yeah, everyone really likes her. I think she's going to be such a good addition to our group," Frankie said. Then she frowned slightly. "The only thing is," after a pause her mother promoted, "the only thing is, well, it's just that Icy seems to be more interested in Twyla than she is in me and my ghoul friends. She's really nice to us and everything, and we get along great, but it just seems like she's really connecting with Twyla. I think maybe she prefers Twyla over us." "Is that a bad thing?" Miss Stein asked gently. "Isn't it good that she's becoming close with another ghoul at school so quickly?" "Well, yeah, I guess." Frankie chewed her lip. "You don't sound so sure," Mr. Stein said. "Is Twyla nice, or are you worried Icy is spending time with someone who isn't going to be a true ghoul friend?" Frankie gasped. "Oh no, it's not that at all. Twyla is voltaciously nice, and she and Icy seem to have really bonded." As she talked to her parents, Frankie began to realize something. "It's just Icy and I would be best ghoul friends. I mean, I am her buddy in the exchange program and all, so I thought we would really hit it off. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Gulia and Christy act like we're programmed for each other, and Venus and Batsy are like two petals on the same flower. I just assumed Icy and I were meant to have a perfect chemistry, too." Miss Stein tilted her head as she thought about what Frankie had said. "I don't think that's the point of the buddy program, Frankie. You're supposed to be her guide and help her find her way during her first week. You're not necessarily supposed to become beast ghoul friends. That sort of special connection doesn't always happen. And it is certainly can't be forced. I know, Frankie said, feeling frustrated. Everything her mom said made sense. But Frankie still felt bad. I just thought she didn't know how to explain what she thought. That she and Icy would become fast Ghoul friends. And then what? Frankie already had so many creepific Ghoul friends, including Draculaura, Claudine, and everyone on the fear-leading squad. Of course, they always had room for more in their group. But did that mean Icy had to pick them as her main pack? Miss Stein smiled and put her arm around her daughter. Frankie, I love that you're so excited to get to know and love every ghoul at Monster High, but you can't be school friends with everyone. Frankie nodded. Her mom was right. Of course she knew she shouldn't feel jealous about Twyla and Icy spending so much time together. Just because she and Icy weren't becoming beast ghoul friends didn't mean they couldn't be ghoul friends at all. You're totally right, Mom. And you too, Dad. Her parents smiled. I just want everyone to have a ghoul friend, and I should be happy that Icy has already really hit it off with Twyla, right? She grinned. Right, her parents agreed. Her mother added, You know, you can always talk to us about this stuff, right, Frankie? Frankie nodded. Then her mom gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and said, 20 minutes until bed, deal? Frankie leaned over to give her mom a hug. Deal. She felt so much better after talking things out with her parents. She had just been so worried about helping Icy fit in and finding Zap Pit and keeping Watzit happy the last few days. It was easy to get carried away with all the things buzzing around in her head. Mr. Stein returned to his own work. Then, while Frankie got started drawing up the plans for her newest creation, she tried to think about what kind of pet Icy would love the most. Since Icy loved the outdoors, Frankie knew she should develop a pet that would enjoy taking walks with her in the woods. She scribbled some notes and began to sketch a few ideas, but she was having a hard time coming up with a perfect pet for Icy. For some reason, her mind kept wandering back to Zap Pit. Frankie hadn't made a lot of progress before her mom poked her head around the corner of the lab again and cleared her throat. Tonight you both need to get some rest. Last night you were up until all hours working down here tonight. I'm forcing you both to take a break from the lab. Frankie and her dad looked at each other and laughed. Mr. Stein put his hands up to surrender and said, Fine. She's right. You know, all of this will be waiting for us here tomorrow. I suppose it is important to take a break from your work every once in a while to let your mind recharge. I couldn't have said it better myself, agreed Miss Stein. Diary entry. When I woke up this morning, I knew right away that something was wrong. Watsit was snuggled up next to me, but when I reached down to pet Zap Pit, I realized my new creature was gone again. I jumped out of the bed and searched all over my room, then ran into the lab to check the charging station. She was nowhere to be found. Obviously, my little escape artist had managed to get out for the second time. Of course, I'm upset that she's gone again. But this time, I'm a little less worried. I know she'll be fine. She'll be okay. And I'm also beginning to wonder if maybe Isol was onto something when she told me she thought Zap Pit preferred to be outside. Maybe she was also right about Zap Pit not really wanting to be around other oh my gosh, I can't even talk today. Another creature all the time. What if I'm trying to force Zap Pit and Watsit to get along and be best friends when they really aren't meant to be BFFs? Maybe Zap Pit is actually better suited with someone else or somewhere else. Frankie. Chapter 9. When Frankie got to school and ran over to tell Icy about Zapit escaping again, Icy laughed and said, I know. What do you mean, you know? Frankie asked. When I got up this morning to greet the sunrise and stretch my legs, I found Zapit curled up in the little den I helped her build on the edge of the forest. It seems she's comfortable there. I think you're right, Frankie said, nodding her head about it. Icy quickly said, I'm really sorry, Frankie. I didn't realize she would fall in love with that den, or I wouldn't have helped her build it. It's just that when she came to me the other night and wouldn't follow me out of the forest, I wanted to do whatever I could to make her feel comfortable and at home, until I could return to her. Only now I think she might think the den is her home. Frankie nodded again. I'm so glad you did what you did when you found her alone in the woods. And Icy, I'm beginning to wonder something. Frankie paused. She thought back to the conversation she'd had with her parents last night about how Icy and Twyla were a perfect match for each other, even though Frankie had been assigned to Icy's buddy, and how she'd been working on building a pet for Icy to make her feel more comfortable. During the time she was at Monster High, then she thought about her connection with Watsit and the way Icy and Zapit seemed to have a similar connection. Suddenly she knew exactly what she had to do to be a good friend. I was wondering if maybe you wanted to care for Zapit? Frankie asked Icy. For a while or forever? Are you serious? Icy asked. Her eyes widened. I would love to take care of her, but I know how much you love her, and I don't know if I could take her away from you. From the way her eyes shone, Frankie could tell she wanted to help. Then Icy shook her head. No, I couldn't take her away from you. Zapit is your new pet. You created her. I'm sure there must be some way for us to help her learn that your house is her home. In that moment, Frankie was absolutely certain that this was what she was supposed to do. She didn't know animals as well as Icy did, but she could tell when someone needed a friend and some comfort. She could tell that Zapit was just a friend Icy needed, and Icy was the right person to help care for Zapit in the way she most needed to be cared for. Please, will you take care of her? Frankie asked, placing the hand on Icy's arm. It's what I want, and I think she just what you need. You are the perfect pair. Icy threw her arms around Frankie and cried, Of course I will. Thank you, Frankie. She pulled away, and Frankie could see there were tears in her eyes. Zapit was just what Icy needed to make her feel perfectly at home. During her monster exchange, just like Frankie, Icy longed to be surrounded by family, and Zapit could be her family while she was away from home. But please, will you let me do something for you too? To thank you for welcoming me to Monster High and for sharing Zapit with me? I don't need anything, Frankie said with a smile. Knowing you're happy here at Monster High is enough for me. Please, Isel said. I insist. What do you have in mind? Come to the woods tonight, Icy said, beaming. I want to show you all of what you Harvest Moon celebration is like, and you can give Zapit a hug. I'm sure she would love to show you her den. Frankie buzzed through the rest of the day, feeling more electrified than she had in days. She couldn't wait to go to Icy's party that night. Icy had invited everyone who wanted to come, including Watsit. And they were all going to meet at moonrise in the clearing near the edge of the woods. When school was out, Frankie rushed home to tell her parents about the party and to grab Watsit. Watsit was just as excited as Frankie about outing the trotted along happily by her side as they made their way towards the forest. When they arrived at the clearing in the forest, Frankie could see a big bonfire was roaring. All her ghoul friends were already hanging out, relaxing on rocks and tree stumps It was a voluptuous party. As soon as she saw her approaching, Icy pulled Frankie into a circle. Frankie looked around at the group and saw smiling faces of all her school friends. Claudine, Draculaura, Laguna, Cleo, Gulia, Batsy, Venus, Kirsty, and, of course, Twyla. Zappit, who stuck close to Icy's side, poked her snout out to greet Watsit. Timidly, the two sniffed each other curiously, then Zappit returned to Icel's side. Tonight, Icy announced to everyone, "We are having a Harvest Moon dance party in Frankie's honor." Icy turned on some music. Spinning and dancing to the music, Icy took Frankie's hand in her own. "On the day we met," Icy said as they twirled through the firelight together, "you mentioned something to me about wishing you had a big family like me, or a pack like Claudine. I've been thinking about what you said, and here's what I realized. Even though you don't have any brothers or sisters, you do have a pack." She gestured around at the crowd of Frankie's ghoul friends. "All of us. We're your pack. You bring us all together like a family." Frankie grinned happily. Icy was right. Of course, Frankie had been wishing for a pack of her own, and here she'd had it all along. Icy wrapped her arms around Frankie's shoulders and went on. "This week, the Monster High family and you especially made me feel at home. Of course, I missed my family back in Boom Hexel, but with family and friends surrounding me, and now Zappit, I know I'll be just fine during my monster exchange. Thank you so much for being such a good ghoul friend." Frankie pulled her in for a hug. "Oh, Icy, that's so sweet of you to say, and you're right, these ghouls really are my pack, and the best pack ever." She squeezed her new friend tighter. "And I'm so glad you're part of it now." "You know," Icy said, swaying beside her, "Zappit's still going to need a charge every once in a while." "Oh," Frankie gasped. "I almost forgot about that. Here's what I was thinking." She looked over at Zappit and Watsit, who were curled up happily on opposite sides of the fire. "Maybe she and I could come over once a week for a charge and fang out. I think I could get her to leave the woods every once in a while, as long as I promise to bring her back to her den to sleep." "I would love that," Frankie replied. Zappit ran over, then nuzzled against Icel's leg. Frankie reached down to scratch her. Then she looked back at Icy and said, "The two of you are so well matched. It's almost as if she was made for you." Icy smiled in the moonlight. "You're such a good friend, Frankie Stein, that I wonder if maybe somewhere deep down you knew I was coming and would need a friend. So you created her just for me." Twyla suddenly approached the two ghouls from out of the shadows. She wasn't dancing with an abandon like everyone else, but she was swaying a bit to the beat of the music. "Will you come and join the group?" she asked, smiling shyly at Frankie and Icy. Frankie and Icy happily danced back to where everyone else was. The whole gang spent the rest of the night talking and dancing and having a voluptuous time under the harvest moon. With the pack like this, Frankie had a feeling that was going to be the best Scaremester ever. Diary entry. Things with Icy have gone monstrously well during the first week of Monster High. She's already what the heck? She's already gotten to be great friends with a ton of ghouls at school. She and Zappit are getting along perfectly together and enjoying their nightly moonlit walking through the forest, and some of the masters at school are already falling head over hoofs for her. I have a feeling she's going to have a creeptific exchange Scaremester at Monster High. And the best thing of all, Icy is officially the newest member of the fear-leading squad. Everyone got to see what a voltacious dancer she is at her Harvest Moon party. While we were dancing around the fire, Cleo asked Icy to come try out for the squad at this afternoon practice. Before she got there, the ghouls and I were really struggling to learn the steps of the complicated new routine that needed creeptific dance element. But we just couldn't get it right. We didn't realize Icy had been watching us practice from just outside the door. All of a sudden, she stepped forward and offered to teach us the most amazing new dance. She's a natural teacher, and her dance was freaky fabulous. Cleo was so impressed that she immediately invited her to join the squad. Turns out Icy's family is full of amazing dancers, and she learned everything she knows from her ancestors. Icy had a feeling she was meant to come to Monster High, so she could share a special part of herself with us. I sure am glad she came to stay, or I might never have figured out what makes Zapit tick. Thanks to Icy, my first lab creation turned out to be a total success. After this week as Monster Exchange buddies, I know Icy and I will be fantastic friends forever. The funny thing is, she thinks she owes me a special thanks for making her feel so at home at Monster High. And I think I owe her a million thank yous for helping me find Zapit and care for her property. Really, neither of us owes the other anything, because helping each other out, that's what ghoul friends do. Frankie. Alright, and here's a picture. And then I'm going to read this other part. Yeah. You guys have a good day.